So when starting a new book, you're going to want to take, if there is a book with plastic on it, you're going to want to take that off first, because as you can see, it causes glares. So when you get a new book from downstairs, the first thing you want to do is grab the step ladder and check through the focal viewfinder up here to adjust the height. Make sure the book is in the correct space. I usually keep it somewhere between this little mark and this little mark, but sometimes it does need to be adjusted for larger or smaller books. So you can adjust this crank in and out, and you can adjust the height up or down. So you'll want to adjust those things before you begin a new book. Now, when taking photos of a book, you can't take both at the same time. You have to do one page at a time. The best thing to do is to start with one page and then move over to the next page. For the first couple pages, look through the viewfinder and make sure you know the general area of where the page needs to be. And then you will have your page, take the picture, move over the page, take the picture, and continue on like that, back and forth. Now, there will come a time when you get a book that is thicker or where the binding is really tight. As you can see, this book lays perfectly flat by itself, but there are many books where the pages don't lay flat and you need to adjust them with some foam or hold pages down with magnets. Then you will have to hold down pages with your finger. We'll just use this book as an example. Even though it does lay flat, we're going to pretend that it's not and that this page is kind of flappy up like this or something and just doesn't lay flat enough. So most of the time I'll usually prop up one page of the book, and then either if that page won't lay flat, I'll like hold it down with this, with like a magnet or with the string magnets. There's a lot of different ways you can experiment holding down pages, but it's totally up to you and what you are most comfortable doing. So like in the other tutorial, I'm going to have my focus all set up and ready to go, and I'm going to start taking photos. So if this page was not laying flat, I usually sit sideways between my computer and the book, and I'll hold down the corner of the book with as little of my finger as possible. It's a lot easier to Photoshop just the tip of your finger than your entire finger out of the page. It'd be best if you didn't have to touch the books at all with your fingers, but in some cases you will have to hold down the page like this with your finger and then Photoshop it out later. So if I were to be taking photos of this book and I needed to hold down a page, I would hold it just like this, and then I would come over here and focus it and then shoot it with the camera. As you can see, here's the image in focus, and you'll be getting rid of this whole area, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Once you have checked your images to make sure they're focused and that they are cropped, and after they're all exported for the day, or your first 10 images or however many you're choosing to export, you're going to rename them, of course, and then you'll open it in Photoshop. We're just going to rename it Test. And then to open it in Photoshop, we're going to right click with the mouse, go to Open With, and click Adobe Photoshop CS6. And it'll open just like this with your photo. Now, literally the only two tools you'll be using are the Zoom tool and the Stamp tool. The Stamp tool is this tool right here. You can even drag over and they'll say what the name is of the tools you're looking for. So in case you forget, it looks just like a little stamp, and when you scroll over, it'll say Clone Stamp Tool. That's the tool you're going to be using, and when it's in use, it's darkened out. The only other tool you'll be using is this Zoom tool right here. But I'm going to give you the shortcuts right now so you don't even have to look on this side for the tools you'll be using. The shortcut for the Zoom tool is Z. And so you'll click Z, and the little magnifying glass will pop up. The shortcut for the Stamp tool is S. So you'll click S, and you'll see that it switches to the Stamp tool. So I want to zoom in to see the area I'm working with, so I'm going to click the Z and click on the image, so that way I can zoom in and see what I'm working with. This is actually going to be a fairly easy edit because there's just one layer really of book that you need to edit and work with. Some other books are going to be more challenging where the pages are different lengths and it's a thicker book and so it'll be a lot harder to make everything straight, but this is great for practice and just to show you the basics of the tools. If you want to zoom back out on your image, you're going to be using the Option tool. The only 3 buttons you'll be using are these 3. Option, the zoom, and the stamp. And then also these brackets when you want to adjust the size of the stamp tool. Now when you're ready to begin clone stamping the image, you're going to push the S and watch it change. And when you have this circle, that is the clone stamping tool. To adjust the size of the circle, you're going to be clicking the brackets. This bracket makes it smaller, and this bracket makes it larger. Now adjusting the size of the bracket is totally up to you and what you feel is best. For this under area, you're going to want to use a little bit of a smaller bracket. You're going to want to stamp out anything that's miscolored, so the gray and the entire finger. Most of the time you'll have an even larger shadow that'll come out to here sometimes, and so you'll pull from the brightest area and drag it over. So in order to start clone stamping, you're going to push the S, and then the Option button is where you get your target. So you see where it's changing, that is the target. And the target means that whatever your target is and where you click the mouse, it's going to pull from that area. You're ready to begin. You're going to be pushing the Option tool, as you can see, to the area you want to stamp. So I'm going to bring it over to the brightest area and hold down the Option and click the mouse. And then I'm going to come over to the actual part of the book. You can adjust the size to whatever you see fit. And I'm just going to drag over the white. And you're going to keep clicking over this area and just drag it over. Click and drag. Click and drag. Until all of the gray is out, all of the shadowing, and you don't have any weird gray lines. You're going to really want to bounce back between zoom, maybe zoom in, check to see if there's any gray, zoom back out, go back to the stamp tool, which is S, adjust it to whatever size you need. You're going to want to make sure you're going slow at first while you're getting into it, and really checking to make sure you're not forgetting anything, because you want these to look as authentic as possible. Now here's where the trickier part comes into play. You're wanting to stamp out the actual part of the thumb. What you're going to do is zoom in a little bit more, get your stamp tool, and you're going to want to line it up, because you're going to be dragging over this area to cover up the thumb. You're going to want to make sure that you have it on a straight line, on any straight line. So you're going to pull from over here and slowly bring it over and take it and replace the darker area and the thumb with the new area. You can bounce back if you need to by clicking on the keyboard. Command Z will take you back a step, and if you push Command Z again, it'll take you back to the original, and if you click it again, it'll take you back to what you just did. So you can bounce back and forth to make sure you like what you just did, and if you don't, you can just go back and redo it. So I am going to pull from over here and really slowly drag it over the thumb. And you see how it kind of just went crooked? I'm going to undo that. And you can start from a different side if you want, like over here, and kind of just really slowly work your way over. And you want to keep the book as straight as possible. Then you'll come from below, and it really doesn't matter if you start below or up here, whatever you feel comfortable with. Sometimes, if it's a lot of pages, I'll even zoom in more and get a smaller stamp tool like this and stamp just the insides of here and pull that over if I need to. Every book is completely different in the way that you need to edit it, so it's really up to you. This is a lot easier in person than over a video, so I'm sure that you will be trained by the previous worker on how to Photoshop in person, which will make it easier. It just takes practice. As a beginner, you won't be this quick as I am right now because it takes a little bit to learn the tools and things like that, but this is basically how you do it. And then you want to zoom in to make sure it looks all right. Then you'll zoom back out, make sure it looks good. Make sure there's no more gray under here. If I see little bits, I'll get a smaller stamp tool, and just kind of pull from below and drag it up, get the weird spots out. And you're just gonna push the option tool, click, drag, option tool, click, drag. The hard thing about Photoshop is making sure that it looks like the actual book. This, like I said, didn't take me very long because it was an easier book to Photoshop because there's just this little base and it's pretty straight already, so that's nice. But you, like I said before, you will get books with lots of pages and with pages that are not straight, and so you'll just want to try to keep them as straight as possible. You'll want to go a lot slower just to make sure that it's straight and it looks real, but it just takes practice. And so the more you Photoshop fingers out, the more you'll understand how to do it, and you'll perfect it later, and the more easy it'll be to perfect it. But the best case scenario is that you don't have to use Photoshop. So if you have a page that will lay flat, let it lay flat because you don't want to have to Photoshop fingers out. And then you'll exit out, you'll click save, and then you move on to the next one. And that is the Photoshop tutorial. It may have seemed a little bit confusing. It's a lot easier to learn from someone else in person, but this will just help you in case you need to remember the tools that you need or the shortcuts and just the basic overview of how to Photoshop fingers out of your images.